Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is the Institute Saga 4 in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 11, Genocide. Nick, what's going on? Nick Fury glanced at one of the constantly updating tactical holo screens before he replied to Clark's question. It isn't good, Clark. We've already passed the alert to every single organization that uses powers that we know of. Something is turning random people into biosentinels, and we don't know what's causing it. Several of our agents were affected. Clark, whatever causes the change wipes their personalities beyond recovery. Sage was training up some of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s telepaths when one of them changed. She felt his soul pass beyond. The silence from Fury's earbud was more eloquent than any amount of cursing. My people are trying to find the pattern. There's no way that this is just a random phenomenon. Fury continued. In the meantime, there's only one thing you can do. Destroy the biosentinels. Before they wipe out all of mutant kind. The biosentinel fired a blast of energy at the small girl screaming in terror in the middle of the playground, only for the blast to be deflected by someone jumping in the way. Not today, Tin Man. Jennifer Walters growled as she grabbed the sentinel and punched it so hard that its head caved in. With its primary control computer destroyed, the sentinel collapsed and Jennifer tapped her earbud. Destroyed another in Central Park. It was about to kill a small girl. She stated. Need a pickup and transfer to New Krypton for her ASAP. Already here? A voice said, and She-Hulk's eyebrows shot up in surprise as Pietro Maximoff appeared in front of her. Dad told me to help out wherever I can, so here I am. What needs doing? Get her to the Angel's Rest. Jennifer commanded. They'll get her details, contact her family and take it from. Watch out. A blast lanced towards the sobbing girl as She-Hulk tried to block it, but the angle was too wide for her to get to where she needed to be and she could only watch as the blast lanced through the empty space where the girl had been. Thanks, Quicksilver. She breathed in relief even as she grabbed a tree, ripping it from the ground and using it to smash the new biosentinel into the ground. She-Hulk to all points. Quicksilver is in New York and he's on our side for now. The shattered tree shifted as the sentinel forced its way up, only to be met by a descending fist. The sparking, leaking remains slowly toppled over as She-Hulk jumped away, seeking out more of the things to destroy. And in breaking news, terror strikes America as humanoid robots go on a killing spree. The newsreader stated, his face showing none of the levity he was normally known for. Casualty reports have already exceeded 13,000 despite the best efforts of the combined superhero teams. Early reports indicate that Australia and the United Kingdom of Great Britain are also under attack by these strange entities, beings which seem to exist to only kill mutants, no matter their ages. No kidding. Hawkeye gasped as he dived below another attack that removed the last of the glass from the panoramic window, taking out the giant television in the process. This sucks. Another beam lanced towards him, only to be deflected by a well-thrown shield, and Hawkeye used the chance to knock and fire an arrow at the sentinel that had just tried to kill him. Sirs, you need to hear this. Jarvis declared. Bit busy here. Hawkeye yelped as a sentinel landed and strode forwards in an attempt to engage him in hand-to-hand, only to be decapitated by Steve Rogers' well-aimed throw. Where the hell is Tony when we need him? Please disperse peacefully and return to your homes. Iron Man broadcast as he hovered in front of the growing mob. Hell, no. The leader shouted as he waved a Church of Humanity flag. It's time to wipe out those muty freaks. Let's purify humanity. Of all the times to get infected by Cap's preference for non-lethal actions. Tony grumbled to himself as he prepared the flashbangs for firing. What? It's confirmed, sir. The operative reported. Every person who has been confirmed as being transformed into a sentinel was once cured by Project Rau's blessing. Dear God. Fury whispered. Millions of people have been treated by the med pods. Early indications are hopeful that no more than 100 pods have been compromised. The operative offered hopefully. Forge and Techmage are already examining one of the pods in question. Techmage. Fury repeated, caught by surprise. Isn't he one of Magneto's acolytes? He is. A voice said, and fury spun to see Magneto himself striding onto the bridge, a quartet of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents following him warily. I have tasked all of my acolytes with countering this newest threat. My powers do not seem to affect these new sentinels, though, so I came here. Do we yet know what, or who is behind this? Not yet. Fury growled. But when we do, then I shall volunteer to be on the team you send. Eric Lenshair said, his face set with determination. I shall aid them to the best of my capability, mutant, human, Olympian or Kryptonian. You have my word. If whoever or whatever is behind this situation had just waited one more week, we'd have been able to get enough help to stop this ongoing catastrophe. Fury growled, and Eric lifted an eyebrow. How so? Let me tell you about candor. And so, with the aid of the protectors who have been bestowed upon humanity by the will of God Almighty, humanity shall regain its true state of purity. The Supreme Pontiff declaimed as he stood on the hastily assembled stage in Times Square, 4 of the Bio-Sentinels standing guard, 1 at each corner. Occasional shadows flashed across the crowd as silver-skinned sentinels, each standing 12 feet tall, flew overhead, scanning the city. Let us embrace the power granted to those selected to protect us from the wiles of the devil, and they shall lead us into a new day of peace and prosperity, a new Eden unsullied by the stench of mutants. The light of the Lord shines through his chosen instruments, and the darkness shall be burned away. Let us celebrate the guardians, and may the Church of Humanity be preserved under their benevolent gaze forever. As if to punctuate his speech, a bolt of lightning arced out of the Stark Tower, catching almost 30 of the flying sentinels and turning them into burning balls of flame. Behold the struggles of the mutant lovers, the traitors to humanity. The Pontiff shouted, pointing at the tower. Join with the sentinels and let us reclaim first this city, then this country, for the true humans. Sir, the crowd around the base of the tower has just changed into a violent mob. Jarvis stated. I hadn't noticed. Tony snarked as several bullets bounced off his armor, leaving smears of lead but no other evidence of impact. Secure all the lower levels while I go and help Point Break with those knockoffs buzzing my tower. Where's Legolas? He is currently safe at the moon base, sir, receiving treatment for his broken arm. However, due to recent developments, all of the med pods have been taken offline until they can be checked for sabotage. Fuck. Tony growled as he arrowed upwards, his gauntlet laser neatly decapitating a Bio-Sentinel that hadn't seen him coming. That'll keep him out of action for several weeks. An alarm sounded and Tony reflexively spiraled out of the way, his conscious mind not even registering the slight flash of red that had told him where the attack was coming from, nor did he pay attention to his own instinctive counter-attack, which resulted in one of the Silver Sentinels being blasted to pieces by a micro-missile. What are those larger models? Analysis of the sensor reports indicates that they are comprised of reinforced actuated skeletons holding a processor unit and power supply. Over 3/4 of their mass, however, is comprised of reactively adjustable micro-units that can be reconfigured into a variety of shapes and systems, including projectors for various attacks or energy fields. Damn things are able to modify themselves to counter their targets. Tony gasped. Who the fuck came up with such a thing? Losses seem higher than anticipated. Dr. Zola mused as he perused the data streams. Nevertheless, our reserves are still above the levels estimated for this portion of the plan, Bastion. Master Mold replied calmly. Have you completed the programming to allow the Bio-Sentinels to generate their own transformation nanites? Almost. Zola replied as he turned his attention back to the code that was debugging. I would like more time to test it to ensure that it doesn't conflict with any of the other programming. Perhaps we should only upload it to a small number first, just to be safe. A valid concern, Bastion. Very well, cue the program for uploading to 0.5% of the Bio-Sentinels and have them report any problems so that they can be corrected. As you command, Master Mold. Where the hell's the programming code? Techmage growled, looking at the relatively small bundle of coding that he and Forge had teased out of the compromised med pod. There's no way that this causes the changes, there isn't enough coding for that. I agree. Forge said, using his power to interface with the console and highlight 3/4 of the scrolling text. This is the instructions on how to build the nanites. This part is the programming loaded into the nanites, there's nothing left over and the amount of coating isn't enough to replicate what we've seen. This must be what's causing it, but there's no way that it can be causing it. Techmage stared at the coating, a contemplative frown on his face. Maybe it isn't, directly. Forge turned to look at the technopath in confusion. Directly. This coating is enough to build a small memory drive and central processing unit, with enough left over for a wireless modem. The nanites construct it, probably in the lower abdomen as there's enough room, and then contact a central processor via the internet. New instructions get uploaded and acted upon, a stage at a time. New systems get uploaded and constructed, changes made to the host's body and feedback tells the central control what stage the host is at, whether or not it can be activated. Forge stared at Techmage, then his gaze was almost dragged back to the screen. Shit, yeah. This is so not groovy, but I think you've nailed it. Just here are the instructions for the internet link, looks like a rotating code of some sort. Must be a heavy load of security at the other end, not sure we can trace this link. It goes through a server too well known for its privacy policy. I heard a rumor that the Kingpin uses it to control his businesses. Techmage confirmed. The security on it is insane. Even I bounced off when I tried to hack it. So, we've come this far to hit a dead end. Forge sighed. Smythe. Alistair Smythe stared at the form crumpled on the ground, then up at his boss who was wiping his hands clean as around the office. Several of his underlings stared in shock at his display of strength. That was a biosentinel. He was one of my best employees. Wilson Fisk ground out. Smythe, I want you to find out everything you can about who caused this and how it was done. I don't care how you do it, but I want answers. Of course, sir. Smythe replied, his fingers already flashing over his touch screen. May I ask Dr. Octavius and Mysterio to assist me? Their scientific abilities may prove advantageous. Do whatever you need to do. Fisk stated. And get a fake body made for his funeral. I refuse to subject his wife and children to the knowledge that their father was transformed into a killing machine. Of course, sir. Alistair replied, having regained his calm. Wilson Fisk was a criminal mastermind of the highest order, but like the most successful masterminds, he only sought to strike at people's emotions when there was a true reason to. Anything other would have been unprofessional. Chapter 12, Pogrom. 793,000 mutants. Zed asked. Plus families, yes sire. Feyre confirmed. More than 3/4 of them have asked to become New Krypton citizens. New Kryptonopolis is actually starting to show the first signs of becoming a true metropolis. Zed leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. Are the new citizens being screened for suitability to act as foster parents for the new generation of Kryptonians? Basic screening is being applied, with potentially suitable citizens being flagged for additional observation. Feyre confirmed. Even assuming that only 1 in 20 of the flagged citizens pass the required examinations, we could be looking at another couple of hundred sets of foster parents for the reborn. Even so, we probably won't complete the project for at least another 2 centuries, there are just too many Q&A samples to do it any quicker than that. And having stable citizens is a priority. Zed confirmed. What about power negation? We have created a number of reinforced wristbands containing an energy wave generator that negates the effects of the yellow sun for the wearer. Feyre said after checking her notes. Early trials of the collar variant in the Kandor prison are highly promising. Excellent. Zed nodded. The thought of a criminal with our powers is rather unsettling. Feyre paused for a moment before a brief shudder ran through her body, causing Zed to smirk. Just imagined it for yourself, did you? Feyre nodded, looking slightly queasy. And our med pods, have they been checked? All med pods have been examined and confirmed as clean, sir. Feyre reported. New Zion and New Olympus report the same. Whatever got into the med pods, it was only on Earth. However, new monitoring programs are being installed, just in case. Excellent. Zed breathed. Pass my congratulations and thanks to those who have worked hard for this. Yes, sir. Scott slumped onto the settee with a heartfelt groan. 3 more. He grumbled. 3. Why? Why does this keep happening? The school seems empty without the other students. Chris sighed as he looked at the older teen. With the evacuation, Lara's the only mutant remaining. The only active mutant. Scott corrected with a sigh. These things can detect passive X gene signatures. The last one I helped take down had killed 2 children and their dad. When I blasted its head off, it was about to kill the baby too. It really doesn't help that the X gene seems to activate for less than half the people who possess it. Several members of the Church of Humanity were apparently latent mutants. Storm offered as she passed a mug of coffee to Scott. Their Supreme Pontiff claimed that it was because they had become corrupted by mutants and urged everyone to turn against us as soon as possible. Rumor has it that the only reason New York isn't under martial law are those Sentinels are too tough, the silver ones, that is. Those blasted things. Scott growled. I had a shot at one, but my beam bounced off. Damn thing spun to try and bounce my beam back at me, but I got away. Still not sure how. Downside, I'm useless against those silver ones. At least the death toll's finally slowing down. Storm offered in the tone of someone looking for any bright point in a dark situation. And Magneto's joined our side. Scott added. I have to admit, I didn't see that one coming. Neither did I, young Cyclops. A smooth voice replied and everyone spun to see the man in question walking into the living room, his helmet tucked under one arm and Charles floating along beside him. However, circumstances have forced me to take a long look at all that I once held to be true. While I still believe that mutants are a superior evolutionary branch compared to humans, the presence of the Kryptonians has changed things greatly. As such, I find myself seeking to preserve all of humanity, mutant and normal alike. Once this is over, Charles has agreed that I may reside here and pursue an old career of mine once more, teaching. Eric has agreed to teach history at Bayville High after we bring an end to the current crises. Charles explained. By bringing knowledge of the problems of the past into the present day, I hope I can help to create a future where no mutant needs to live in fear. Eric stated calmly, then he frowned. Speaking of places where mutants do not live in fear, what's happening with Genosha? Another load. King Marco sighed as he saw a line of explosions over the sea. How many Sentinels is that now? The automated defenses have countered and destroyed over 200 Sentinels, my lord. Yago said after a brief pause caused by him consulting his internal info link. Xanatos Enterprises has really proven themselves. Juggernaut grinned. Remind me to give them an additional tax reduction for, how do I phrase, destroying dozens of annoying robots trying to kill my people. Services rendered to Genosha, sire. Marco nodded. Excellent. You know, having you on my personal squad really makes things run smoother. Yago nodded, glancing sideways to where Polaris had just walked past the door with Galatea. His one attempt to intimidate the Kryptonian clone had resulted in almost half of his body having to be rebuilt while his, accidental, sneaking up on Polaris had left him embedded in a wall until King Marco had pulled him out, chuckling as he did so. Yago had learned his lesson well. He much preferred a comfortable life, with several small luxuries and plenty of opportunities to earn more, rather than one where he was finding new places to be embedded in walls. Even if it meant working for someone who reminded him a bit too much of Goliath. They're doing fine, mainly due to David Xanatos' company. Charles stated. Xanatos has been pursuing closer business arrangements with Genosha and New Krypton ever since I helped him with a certain project of his, one designed to go towards repaying the debt he owes the gargoyles. He's been quite eager to try new ways of doing things, hiring mutants with odd powers and finding ways to make them profitable. I think I heard about that. Eric mused. Didn't he get one girl a job with Japanese filmmakers? Lisa Williams, codename Sakura. Charles confirmed. She can generate flower petals on command and even control their trajectory to a degree. Apparently the Japanese filmmakers love her because her petals can be directed to help in dramatic scenes. Eric smiled slightly at that. Is he a mutant himself? Xanatos, I mean. No. Charles said. However, he is one of the most intelligent planners I have ever met, one who is always on the lookout for another chance to make a profit. And not just a financial one. Come to think about it, I may have to contact him. Since he employs many mutants, he would feel protective about them, but I have no idea what he's doing to protect them. Grey. The shredded remains of the Bio-Sentinel crashed to the ground as a huge figure straightened up, wings flaring outwards before folding inwards to form a cape. For a moment, the looming being was backlit by an explosion as burning debris crashed to the ground, then another figure of almost identical size landed, repulsor slowing it so that it touched down gently. "Thanks, Goliath," the second figure said as its helmet retracted, revealing the face of David Xanatos. This was the biggest attack yet. Goliath looked at the scattered pieces of technology and the less than pleasant modified biosystems of the smaller enemies. "You are part of the clan. The clan will always provide aid to its members. A fact I am very grateful for," David replied with a smile that lacked most of the calculation and cynicism that he usually displayed. If his reputation is anywhere near accurate, then I am certain that he has the situation under control. He always does. Charles said with a slight smile. He always does. If only these new Sentinels didn't have that anti-magnetic field. Magneto sighed. It would be so much easier to deal with them if I could simply rip them apart. The mutant population in New York has been virtually eliminated despite the heavy losses amongst our forces, Trask reported. Although Bayville is problematic, the mutant population there has also been severely depleted. Our probes picked up less than 20 X gene signatures. The Church of Humanity is ready to move in and provide rear security as the area of purification increase. In addition, we have been preparing many of them for potential activation via nanites included in their food and drink. Then go and give the required orders to your followers, Master Mold stated. Trask saluted, then vanished in the bright flash of a teleporter. He is getting too excited about this, Armin Zola noted from the corner of the hall, where he was working on his own projects. He has forgotten that this is not about destruction, but about gaining control. Just like Hydra once was. Zola nodded. Before Hydra was taken over by Apocalypse, there was a plan to take control, but Apocalypse changed it, made it more theatrical, meaning that people were alerted too early and stopped it. Like the Kryptonians. They are unlikely to interfere since they lost so many during the Brainiac incident, Zola pointed out. Over a quarter of them gone in one day. How unfortunate. It will take them at least 15 years before their new generation is ready to deploy. 15 years for us to gain control over all of America, and maybe, if the plan works without any setbacks, the world. Both cybernetic beings looked at each other for a long moment, then Zola returned to his project while Master Mold resumed directing her Sentinels as the secondary force assembled for a strike that would grant her access to New Krypton, the mutants hiding there and the vast reserves of technology that she could repurpose for a new generation of Sentinels even more capable than those she now had under her command. Despite the distractions, though, a portion of her mind was reviewing everything that Zola had been doing. The fact he seemed to be perfectly obedient was worrying. It meant that whatever he was planning, she hadn't managed to catch even a trace of it yet. Smythe. Report. I have the location, and the target, Smythe said with grim satisfaction as he triggered the holo screens. What you are looking at is a version of Sentinel created to allow for the manufacture of other Sentinels. This one can take over any factory that's large enough and repurpose its machinery to produce new Sentinels. Although only one has been built, it is quite formidable, both in its own right and because of its ability to produce and control Sentinels. Its designation is Master Mold. Fisk glared at the image. That's the who. Now, what about the where? This is where we had a stroke of luck. Smythe smirked. You see, Master Mold has been using our servers to transmit the programs needed to activate its Bio-Sentinels. As such, not only do I have several copies of the program to play with, meaning that if I can locate and rewrite the loyalty coding, we could have an army of them ready to follow every one of your commands, but by backtracking, we have Master Mold's location. Should I have an anonymous source send the position to Superman's group? I think not, Smythe. Fisk mused. No, I believe that I will have the Six deal with this. Oh, and Smythe, once this is over, Please double-check my med pods to find out which of them has been implanting these nanites into my people. Of course, sir. And the main story of the evening, a sentinel strike on Friendship Island, the location of the gate connecting Earth to New Krypton, was defeated with no casualties amongst the defenders. A force of Kryptonians and mutants defeated the attempted attack and in doing so, ensured that the railroad for fleeing mutants remains open. In a statement by Governor General Zod today, New Krypton has reaffirmed its intent to allow mutants and those from other endangered minorities to seek refuge there, so long as they abide by the rules of New Krypton. Chapter 13, A Sinister Mission. Gentlemen, Otto Octavius started as he looked at the assembled villains. Today is the day we earn our paychecks and commence Operation Thunderbolt. Mysterio, the target, if you would be so kind. The meeting hall darkened as a hologram of an otherwise unremarkable factory set in a valley appeared a meter above the floor, rotating slowly so that everyone could see it. This is our target, gentlemen, or to be more precise, this is where our target is. For a brief moment, the map zoomed out so that everyone could see where the factory was located, then it resumed its previous state. The plane has been prepared and we will parachute out several miles away. We will walk to our attack point in order to avoid giving away our presence via the energy signatures of the more active forms of transport. Vulture, I'm afraid that this means that you'll be grounded on the approach as well. Mysterio and I have developed special devices to shield our own technology's power signatures and Mysterio will be providing concealment during our journey to this point. One of Dr. Octopus' tentacles suddenly emerged from the map to show where he was referring to. Once here, we shall do a final recon before we attack. Our target is the sentinel known as Master Mold. The map vanished as Octavius retracted his mechanical tentacle, being replaced by the silvery figure of the sentinel that was their target. Next to it, and less than half its height, was a human figure for scale. Other beings of note are the prototype sentinel known as Bastion and the former military general Bolivar Trask. Both are to be taken out if possible, but Master Mold is the priority target. It must be disabled or destroyed. We agree. Eddie Brock stated. We have done many things we thought necessary, but we have not killed children. These things have and without hesitating. There are lines even we will not cross. Rhino, Otto continued, once we launch the attack, I believe it would be best if you go in first. After all, you are our heaviest hitter. They'll say hello to my little friend. Rhino gloated, unslinging his Gatling blaster and holding it up. Vulture face-palmed and everyone, except Rhino, looked at him. We had an Al Pacino marathon yesterday. The Godfather trilogy, Dick Tracy, and Scarface. In that order. Huh. Explains the smell of popcorn. I had thought it was one of my experiments going wrong. Otto finally said, his eyebrows raised above his shades. Hidden depths. You have it correct, Rhino. They will indeed say hello to your little friend. Sirs. A new voice interrupted and everyone turned to see their butler in the doorway. Lord Fisk sends his compliments and the plane is ready for you. The butler bowed and retreated, closing the door behind him. For a former street thug, he really enjoys his role. Sandman mused. He is proof that life is what we make of the opportunities presented to us, rather than the burdens which are forced upon us. Vulture shrugged, then he caught Rhino's perplexed expression and sighed. We are what we want to be. I want to smash something. Rhino grinned. I believe Hulk is the one who smashes. Otto snarked. Perhaps trampling would be better? Or crushing? Yeah, Rhino crush. Rhino pulled himself to his feet and flipped up his visor so that he could glare at the shattered remains of the tree that he had crashed through. Wow. Sandman noted as he rolled up his parachute. You really crushed that. Gentlemen. Dr. Octopus interrupted before the argument could start. We have several miles to cover to our destination, so I would advise saving your energy for the battle ahead of us. You got it, document. Sandman said, hefting the bundle of fabric. What do we do with these? For now, we use some of the branches that Rhino provided to secure them. Octavius replied. That way we will be able to retrieve them afterwards, or at least be sure that they will not blow away in the wind and cause problems. That was quite a landing, Rhino. Vulture noted as he swooped in to land on Rhino's armored shoulder. You didn't damage anything, did you? Nope, lights are still all green. Excellent. Well, it seems as if we are all here. We are indeed, Vulture. Octavius agreed. Mysterio, if you would be so kind. The area around them rippled slightly. We are cloaked. Mysterio declared. As long as you remain within 5 meters of me, you cannot be seen or heard by any security that has been set up. Then shall we get moving? Octavius prompted. We need to get this over and done with before all those new Kryptonians finish powering up and do it for us. New Kryptonians? Venom asked and Octavius nodded. Oh my, yes. A whole city full according to Smythe's sources. Several million at least. Certainly means our current careers are looking rather less sustainable, doesn't it? For a long moment, the entire group remained silent, contemplating the thought of several million individuals each as powerful as Superman. Changing the subject, Vulture finally said, may I say that the flip-down visor you made for me really does help. The heads-up display with map and compass make finding the targets far easier. I didn't get anything. Sandman half protested. Your powers make it incredibly difficult to create anything that you can reliably use. Octavius replied as they ducked under a low-hanging branch. I've been researching nanotechnology, but the programming and power requirements are quite finicky. For now, I'm afraid that you simply can't get an upgrade that will work. We are wondering what the box you had us wear on our belt was. Venom noted. It is an IFF beacon. Mysterio supplied. Designed to work in conjunction with Rhino's targeting system so that he does not accidentally shoot us. Ah, we had wondered. There it is. Otto half-whispered as he peeped over the ridge of the hill, using the bushes growing on top of it as cover to prevent his silhouette from being noticed. That is a lot bigger than I expected. Vulture admitted after taking a quick glance for himself. Which part do you think is Master Mold in? Everyone turned to look at Mysterio, who responded by holding out one hand and casting a hologram of the complex at knee height. Tags started to appear on it and Otto leaned forwards for a closer look. Interesting. It looks like the central area is the oldest, the newer wings are quite precise in their placement and design. I would estimate that their architect wasn't human. The power system. I know I've seen those readings before. Arc reactor. Vulture supplied. I looked into using one to power my suit, but building one small enough to mount was beyond my skills, and my finances at the time. The power frequency is the same, but the amplitude. I'd say it was half again as large as the one at Stark Tower. What the hell is it doing with all that power? Sandman muttered. An excellent question. Otto replied. Mysterio, what defenses can you locate? A rash of dots in 3 different colors appeared on the hologram, cones spreading out from them to indicate the area they covered. From the energy flows, the blue dots would be sensor systems, cameras and so on. The red ones are weapons systems, most of them being a variant of the Force Blaster which seems to be very similar to the ones the Sentinels use, only larger. The flashing red dots are the Gatling variant. The yellow dots seem to be ECM and holographic projectors. From the wave patterns I am picking up, they appear to be projecting an image of how this compound used to look in order to fool satellite imaging systems. Huh. No wonder that no one has found this place. Vulture said with a slight chuckle. Once the image goes down, they'll be rushing people here as fast as they can. Assuming that they notice. Otto shot back, then he sighed. And since S.H.I.E.L.D. is using Kryptonian technology these days, they will notice. So we need to strike hard and fast. Sandman summed up. What's the best route in and where should we be heading once inside? One of my stealth drones just sent back an image. Mysterio announced as a purple humanoid figure appeared in the main structure. That is Master Mold. Programming location icon, now. Otto turned to look in the direction of the compound and smirked as a small purple crosshair seemed to float in front of him, a small set of numbers underneath telling him the distance. I have it. He stated. Route. My seismic sensors detected an old drainage tunnel. Mysterio noted. It doesn't appear on any of the plans for the compound that I could access, and it emerges behind that half-ruined storage shed. We understand. Venom grinned, his teeth glinting in the dappled light. Through the tunnel and from there, to the doors. Rhino, you will go first. Otto decided, and the armored thug brightened. As soon as you get out of the tunnel, destroy the security systems that Mysterio is going to highlight for you on your HUD. Will do. Rhino grinned. I've been practicing. He has. Vulture confirmed. Rhino's quite a savant with his Gatling. While his accuracy with his other weapons is still questionable, he can hit whatever he wishes with his little friend. Rhino's grin grew wider. Yeah, hear that? With my gun, I'm a savant. Vic, what's a savant? Master Mold turned her attention to the security systems and quickly scanned the files. Although she could very easily have allowed the repurposed Sentinel to run the system without her intervention, part of her programming produced what would, in an organic, be classified as low-grade paranoia when it came to her personal safety. After all, she was the primary locus for the creation of the Sentinels. While they could be built without her, they would not be as efficient or produced so quickly. It was her ability to. Her systems briefly froze as she rescanned one of the camera feeds, then rewound it and replayed it, superimposing the second piece of footage over the top. Bastion. I am sending some security footage to you. Review it and tell me if your conclusions are similar to my own. As Bastion scanned the data, Master Mold used her link to watch his thoughts, and within a fraction of a second, he had reached the same conclusion. Someone has penetrated the outer defensive layer. He stated. The imagery matches too closely, and since the system shows no sign of being hacked, it was an external manipulation. Probably holographic. Master Mold brought up her file of known powered beings capable of illusions and began scrolling through them. Loki. He would have teleported in. Or strode up to the main door and demanded entrance. Bastion disagreed. No, I would guess. Mysterio. Master Mold pulled up the file on Mysterio and scanned it. His holographic projection capabilities matched with what they had deduced had happened, but there was a link in the file to another. One titled Sinister 6. Bastion, prepare to. Master Mold began, only to be interrupted by the wailing of damage alert sirens and intruder alarms. Activating every mobile sentinel in the base, regardless of its completion level, Master Mold hesitated a fraction of a millisecond before sending out the override signal to activate every single potential bio-sentinel and order any of them that were close enough to come to her defense. Now she had been discovered, secrecy was no longer an option. Ya. Rhino roared as he swung his Gatling blaster in what appeared to be an uncoordinated arc, but one which took out every one of the cameras and weapons which Mysterio had highlighted for him. Even as the bolts impacted, Vulture flew past, inches from the ground, landing in a controlled tumble by the main door and slapping a shaped charge to it before diving to the side and wrapping himself in his metallic wings. Fire in the hole! Otto shouted, triggering the charge remotely, and the explosion blasted the doors inwards, flattening one of the two sentinels standing guard just inside, while the second was knocked off balance just long enough for a wave of sand to engulf it, ripping it apart at the joints. We are going to have fun. Venom exulted as he dashed into the building, the others hot on his heels. Chapter 14, Clash of Ideologies. Kill the mutants. Mutant scum. Kill the mutants. Mutant scum. Clark sighed as he flew over the chanting crowd. Several of the protesters were wearing outfits meant to look like the Bio-Sentinels, a few of them had even applied white makeup. Clark quickly scanned them just to be certain that they were actual humans, then altered his course slightly to land on the balcony of the Daily Bugle. The man standing waiting for him scowled, but the scowl was aimed at the protesters below. Damned fools! He growled. It's like Hitler all over again. Clark glanced at the man's toothbrush mustache but refused to make the obvious comment. Instead, he decided to ask something that had been niggling at him for a while. I thought you weren't all that keen on mutants because of their link with Spider-Man. He prompted, earning a glare. Yeah, well. That was before you went public and explained why masks are a thing. James Jonah Jameson half growled. I disliked Spider-Man because he hid his face, but I thought it was so he could beat up people without needing to worry about the law. Then I met his aunt. At my wedding. Clark nodded. May Parker is quite a formidable woman when she chooses to be. JJJ nodded in unwilling agreement, then turned away from the chanting mob. The other people are here and we're going live in 5. He grumbled. Glad you could make it. We think we've countered most of the sentinels. Clark said as he walked alongside the older man. We've also worked out how the bio-sentinels were created and we're working on preventing any new ones being made. Is it true that each one of those things is made by killing someone? JJJ asked and Clark nodded. It is. A telepath was linked to one when he was transformed. She felt him die. Damn. JJJ snarled as he led the way into the studio where several people were clustered around one of the cameras. What's going on here? Almost fixed. One of the techs called. Check it now. Opening tab and, yep. Image is stable. The teen behind the control panel called. Parker couldn't have done this better. Clark smirked, making a mental note to pass the comment across to Peter later. 2 minutes. Clark moved to one of the spare seats and, carefully adjusting his cape, sat down. Not very practical, is it? One of the men on the other side of the stage sneered and Clark shrugged. It has its uses. Heh. The man snorted. Can't think of any. Blanket for use in first aid, shelter against the rain for those trapped in bad weather, flag for attracting attention. Clark stated as he leaned back in his chair, causing the man's sneer to fall from his face. That's 3 without even trying. And get ready. The tech called as the final chair was filled. Clark glanced sideways at the man in military uniform, then turned his attention to JJJ who had taken his position in the middle of the stage, unlit cigar clenched between his teeth and shirt sleeves rolled up. 3, 2, 1. This is a Daily Bugle live discussion special and I am James Jonah Jameson. Today's subject, the attacks on those with the X gene. From my right are Reverend Simon Theophilus, representing the Church of Humanity, Senator Robert Kelly, Clark Kent, also known as Superman, and Major Blackstone, also known as Sarge, of the First Meta-Human Company. Gentlemen, welcome and thank you for coming. Clark nodded with a slight smile as the others made noises of acknowledgement. So, who wants to go first? JJJ asked, turning to face the quartet even as one of the dangling arm-mounted cameras moved round to get a better view of him without actually entering the visual ranges of the other cameras. I will. Senator Kelly stated. As many of you know, my brother and I have come to disagree on certain issues, especially those in possession of the X gene. While I do not condone the killing of those who have this particular genetic flaw, the actual physical threat that they pose to the innocents around them must be contained. You're talking about the so-called Mutant Registration Act, aren't you? Sarge growled, leaning forwards in his chair as his fists clenched. You just can't drop it, can you? The preservation of humanity is my overriding concern. Kelly responded in a superior tone. And America is the epitome of humanity. Our Constitution says so, one nation under God. Yet America is less than 3 centuries old. Clark pointed out. Krypton, my home world, has a recorded history going back millennia. Since there are less than 40 of you, it doesn't really count. Reverend Theophilus sneered, then he paused. Okay, less than 40 adults. Actually, at the last count, there are over 12 million adult Kryptonians. Clark countered, earning shocked looks. Muty scum fleeing from Earth don't count. I actually wasn't including them in the count. Clark countered. Of course, they only raise the number by another couple of million. Kelly stared at Clark, his eyes wide. Twee, how? Brainiac. Clark smirked. In a manner similar to the ones behind the recent attacks, it perverted General Zod's plan to save the cities of Krypton from the planet's imminent destruction to shrink Kandor and place it in stasis, blaming its apparent destruction on Zod and his followers. When we took down Brainiac, when the 14 sacrificed themselves to ensure our victory, we found the city, undamaged. With the aid of Victor Von Doom, Tony Stark and Reed Richards, we were able to return Kandor to its proper size and free its inhabitants. Richards and Doom working together. Sarge chuckled. I never thought that the day would come. Wait. Theophilus interrupted. What did you mean by in a manner similar to the ones behind the recent attacks? You know how the Sentinels are made. By murder. Clark stated in a flat voice. Someone managed to insert programming into several of the med pods, programming that led to the creation of tiny devices within the victims, devices that once activated, would kill them and turn their corpse into a biological cyborg programmed to kill anything with the X gene. Perhaps I should have let my son be treated. Steve muttered. Little Nancy boy might actually have amounted to being something useful. Clark glared at him, but none of the others seemed to have heard his comment. We, and by which I mean the collected superhero teams, the associated agencies and the law enforcement organizations of the world, are still tracking down all those who might have been affected by the sabotage. In addition, all of the med pods have been transferred to New Krypton for analysis, and new med pods, with upgraded security protocols to avoid anything like this happening again, are being shipped in from New Krypton as fast as they can be constructed. We hope to have replaced all of the old pods by the end of the year, although medical cases that require the med pods will have to be dealt with on a triage basis until then. As for whoever is behind this, they will be found and charged with hundreds of counts of murder. Killing mutie scum ain't murder. Simon growled. It's pest control. Senator Kelly slowly slid his chair further away from the Reverend. It isn't just the mutants, it's all the people who were harmed or killed by the Bio-Sentinels as well. Then they shouldn't have been trying to protect the mutie scum. Simon shot back, ignoring the looks of disgust that most of the people in the room were sending his way. Humanity should be kept pure. I believe a certain Austrian had similar ideas. Sarge interjected. Perhaps you've heard of him. Adolf Hitler. Wasn't he the king of Italy? JJJ face-palmed, as did Kelly and Sarge, while Clark just shook his head. How can you be so ignorant of world history? He sighed. Hitler was a failed artist who entered politics and rose to power by blaming the Jews for everything that had gone wrong. And they're still fucking things up for us even though they've run away to another planet like the stinking cowards that they are. Simon shouted, causing Kelly to slide his chair even further away. Jews are almost as bad as muties. Wow, this guy is doing his cause so much damage. May Parker mused before she took a sip of her tea. I agree. Martha Kent said as she picked up a cookie to nibble on. And he doesn't even realize he's doing it. Both women exchanged smirks, then turned their attention back to the broadcast. And they've brought the world to the brink of destruction. Simon Theophilus had risen to his feet during his impassioned diatribe, and Clark started forwards to catch him as he convulsed. Even before Clark reached him, his skin had paled and armor plating was oozing out of his skin, shredding his clothes. Get everyone out of here. Clark ordered, his eyes widening in horror as he watched the nanites perform their programmed tasks. He's being converted into a Bio-Sentinel. Screams from other floors and outside rose, and Clark spun round. Something's happening. He shouted. Something's triggered everyone who is infected with the nanites. Officer Karima Shapendar had no idea that she was a mutant. A young police officer who had immigrated from India to be closer to the superheroes she idolized, she possessed a variant of the X gene that had indeed activated during puberty, but she hadn't noticed the effects. The X gene had granted her perfect memory, but her recall had been extremely good beforehand, thus she simply didn't notice. It also made her immune to telepathy and most forms of mind control, but due to her position as a street-level rookie, she was never in a situation where she would have discovered her power. She had also been in a med pod after taking a dozen bullets while saving a pair of young children. One of the sabotaged pods. Assigned to help ride herd on the protest that had formed outside the Daily Bugle, Karima had just enough time to see almost half the protesters suddenly staggering and falling before a massive blast of pain lanced through her mind, knocking her out. Control. What's going on? Clark snapped as he punched through the head of another of the Bio-Sentinels that had once been an innocent person. Although he felt guilty about ending a life, the knowledge that he was destroying technological zombies was enough to let him continue to function. We're getting reports in from across the planet. Thousands of people are being turned into Clark, it's Fury. We've managed to locate the source of the Bio-Sentinels. General Zed is personally leading the companions of Rao and a team of his own people to take it down, but orbital imagery indicates there's already a super team on site, engaging in combat. We don't know who. I've taken the liberty of deploying the protectors to the places they can do the most good. Thanks, Nick. Clark responded as he used his heat vision to disintegrate a bio-sentinel that had been reaching out to snap a young boy's neck. Two blurs, one blue and red, the other black and red, somersaulted down and began firing streams of webbing at the remaining bio-sentinels, slowing them enough that the wave of heroes following them were able to start taking them down with relative ease. New York Guardians are on the scene. Clark reported. Spider-Man and Spider-Boy are pinning down the bio-sentinels for the others to take care of. Zed and his team are on their way to the target area. Fury replied from the bridge of the helicarrier. I am sending you the coordinates should you wish to join them. Clark looked round, absently backhanding one of the bio-sentinels through a nearby wall. Got it. I'm on my way. I'll inform Zed you're incoming. Ow. That hurt. Karima groaned as she opened her eyes to find herself lying in a pile of rubble. Pulling herself to her feet, she glanced up and spotted a bio-sentinel about to kill a teenage girl. Oh no you don't! She shouted, lunging forwards and punching the sentinel in the back of its head. The skull caved in under her blow and she paused, staring at her pale hand and the blue armor covering her arm. Oh shit! She panicked. What the hell happened to me? Karima looked up at the tall green-skinned woman who had paused mid-punch. What happened to me? Everyone, this is She-Hulk. We seem to have a sentinel, who's still human. Chapter 15, The Heroic Six. Trask appeared on the teleporter pad just as the base shook and the alarms started blaring. A second tremor jolted him off the pad and he stumbled for an instant before recovering his balance. What's going on? We are under attack. Zola stated as his skin rippled from its pinkish hue into metallic silver. I believe it is the Sinister Six. We believe you are correct. A new voice purred and Zola unleashed an energy blast from the circle that had formed on his chest. The black-clad figure that had just burst into the hall managed to evade the energy beam, but the armored figure just behind was blasted back out of the hall. Venom. Trask growled as his helmet deployed from his collar, covering his head. Die. His shoulder pauldrons briefly popped up, disgorging a dozen micro-missiles which screamed towards Venom, who responded with a dazzling display of acrobatics that let him dodge every single one of them. Before Trask could fire a second salvo, an arm ripped off one of the sentinels scythed across the hall, slamming into his torso and knocking him back against the wall. Targets identified as the Sinister Six. Master Mold stated. Searching for Mysterio. Unable to locate. This is Vulture, we have incoming bio-sentinels. I'll keep them off your backs. Understood, Vulture. Otto said as he ripped open the wall near the door to the hall and let his tentacles lift himself through. You would be at a disadvantage in this area, anyway. A silver sentinel stepped up behind Otto, its hands reforming into blades, then a wave of sand engulfed it, ripping it to shreds. Thank you, Sandman. Otto said calmly as one of his tentacles speared through another sentinel, taking out its power core and causing its nanites to shut down. That could have been quite annoying to deal with. You tried to hurt me, so you can say hello to my little friend. Rhino shouted as he erupted through the wall, his Gatling already firing hundreds of blasts of kinetic energy. Trask barely managed to activate his shield in time to deflect the dozen bolts that would have hit him while Bastion seemed to melt before flowing downwards through a small hole in the floor. It would seem that Bastion's choice of action is the most logical one. Master Mold stated. Trask, retreat. We can no longer stay here. Hell, no. Trask yelled as he fired the gun integrated into his right arm. Once we take these bastards down, they'll make excellent sentinels. Master Mold spent 0.0254 of a second calculating the advisability of using the override to extract Trask from the growing battle, then she made her choice. Trask, although a very useful asset, was still expendable and would make a useful rearguard while she left. Her decision made, Master Mold rose from her throne, the control and power cables detaching as she did so, and began to make her way to the doors at the back of the hall where her sentinels were beginning to enter in response to her summons even as she sent the signal that started a certain countdown. As she reached the doorway, it wavered and vanished as if it had never been, the incoming sentinels broadcasting error messages as their sensors detected a metal wall blocking their path, one that had appeared from nowhere. Checking her files, Master Mold performed a hard override of the sentinels still outside and sent one walking into the new wall. The sentinel penetrated the steel barrier without any impact and Master Mold gave a mental nod. Mysterio. Master Mold pulled up the most recent schematic of the base and mapped a model of herself into it. If Mysterio pushed himself, he might be able to cause her to walk into a dead end without realizing it, but if she used her internal virtual model to plot her progress, his illusions could not hurt her. Redirecting the sentinels to clear a path for her, Master Mold strode confidently through the fake barrier. The small pipe that had been secretly emplaced months prior by means of a small, one-shot tunneling machine disgorged a flow of liquid metal. As the flow slowly ended, the pile of metal reformed into a familiar figure. "Goodbye, Master Mold." Armanzola sneered. "Your attempt to leash me was good, but I was better." Without looking back, the scientist strode into the woods, shifting his appearance once again until a large grizzly bear was padding between the trees. Vulture swooped, the leading edges of his wings glowing with the shaped energy projection field that he, Mysterio and Otto had worked together to integrate into his suit. The cutting fields worked perfectly, bisecting the newest group of flying bio-sentinels, and Victor Toombs sneered as the last one was slashed in half. "Idiot things make it easy, flying in formation like that." Banking, his eyes widened as the next approaching group broke formation and started to spread out, arcing round to approach from a variety of angles, while behind them, a second group was following suit. "Fuck. They're learning. Master Mold is ignoring my illusions." Mysterio grumbled. "I need a heavy hitter to slow her down or she's going to escape." Otto ducked a blast as his tentacles speared out, ripping the power cores out of two more of the silver robots. "Sandman, stop Master Mold." "Mysterio, guide him," he ordered as a chortling rhino blasted another 3 sentinels into scrap. "Venom, report. We are busy with Trask. Try to disable him, we want him alive if possible as it will help with Project Thunderbolt." Otto ordered. "Vulture. Little busy here. Damn it." Otto growled as he slammed his tentacles down on 2 more sentinels. "I hate to say this, but we're going to need a miracle." "You broke my gun." Rhino shouted, and Otto glanced back just in time to swear and duck as a barrage of micro-missiles erupted from Rhino's shoulders, blind-fired. Tapping into their targeting systems, Otto quickly designated specific targets, and seconds later, the number of active sentinels in the room had been reduced to 0. "I'm good." Rhino gloated as he stamped on an intact sentinel head, shattering it under his armored boot. "That was fun. A group got past me." The skylights shattered as a dozen bio-sentinels descended on them, and Otto gave Rhino a quick glare before pulling himself out of the way of the first energy barrage. "It's stomping time." Rhino roared, and Otto fought the temptation to roll his eyes since his HUD incorporated micro-cameras to let him control it via eye twitches. Perhaps he might have to rethink that. Trask frantically looked around. Whatever he was fighting, it had taken out most of the lights and was demonstrating abilities at camouflage that would put most chameleons to shame. Even his attempt at using the infrared spectrum had failed due to the sheer amount of half-melted wreckage and fires in the assembly line into which he had been kicked. A bit of movement caught his attention, and he fired several blasts from his arm cannons before a clawed hand slammed into his head from the side, gouging out one of his helmet optical sensors and cutting his field of view in half. Overriding the deployment system, Trask retracted the left side of his faceplate, accepting the greater risk in favor of actually being able to see in stereo again. And maybe be able to see whatever he was up against. "We will peel you out of that shell of yours." A voice hissed and a tag popped up in Trask's still deployed screen. "Eddie Brock, you will die." Trask shouted, switching his cannons to a lower power for a higher rate of fire and unleashing multiple volleys all around him. "You will die, and that alien thing that gives you your power will be dissected and used to create the next generation of Sentinels." "We disagree." Venom sneered as he moved across the ceiling. "We would say that it is you who will die, but we have been asked to take you alive for questioning." "Of course, alive doesn't mean with your limbs still attached." Trask's eyes widened in horror as he spun round, trying to find the location of the echoing voice, his guns gouging divots out of the walls as he turned. "We are curious," Venom continued as he positioned himself. "Why is it that you people rarely look up?" Trask had just enough time to raise his gaze before he was slammed into the ground and his arms wrenched outwards, his servos whining as he tried to resist. "We will enjoy this." The monster crouched on his chest, almost purred. Trask's scream echoed off the walls. The door opened and Master Mold stepped out of the base. Checking her external sensors against her internal map, she noted that Mysterio had obviously given up. She stepped forwards, then paused as, instead of the crunch of gravel, the sound of sand compressing under her foot registered. "Sandman." As if the statement was his cue, Sandman engulfed her in a wave of sand, his grains forcing themselves into her joints and seams, levering them apart as they sought to destroy her inner workings. Forcing her gaze upwards, Master Mold scanned the sky frantically, finally finding what she was searching for. "You cannot win. I shall return," she stated even as the wave of sand reached her vocoder. The top of her head opened as she activated the systems she had built into herself as a last-ditch life or death measure, one that she had never truly expected to need. Before the wave of sand could block her final effort, she locked onto the satellite she had located and initiated an emergency burst uplink, leaving her body behind as her mind soared towards freedom. Otto slammed into the wall and a hand grabbed his throat even as his tentacles were pinned by two silver sentinels and the bio-sentinel throttling him raised its hand, force blaster glowing in its palm. Otto's gaze was transfixed by the ominous glow of doom, then it suddenly faded and the sentinels all collapsed. For a long moment, Otto remained motionless, then a voice echoed across his communicator. "This is Sandman. I crushed the metal bitch's body, but she had a dish sticking out of the top of her head. I think she jumped out before I finished crushing her." Otto sagged. "Damn. Mysterio, please tell me you were jamming her at the time." "I was not," Mysterio replied instantly, and Otto slid down the wall in dismay. "We have Trask." Venom gloated as he strode in, dragging a nearly limbless torso behind him. "His limbs were all artificial, we disarmed him." "Very droll," Otto groaned. "But we failed. Master Mold has escaped." "I must disagree with you there," Mysterio said as he appeared out of nowhere, holding up a cube that glowed with green light. Squinting, Otto saw that the green light was actually hundreds of columns of rapidly changing green letters and numbers. "Rating films now." It seemed appropriate. Mysterio said. "We now have Master Mold's code to do with as we wish." "What?" Otto didn't remember rising to his feet, but suddenly he was standing before Mysterio, plucking the cube from his gloved hand and staring at it. "This is..." A sudden screeching interrupted him as the entire roof was pulled off and several dozen figures landed around them. "Don't move!" Generals had barked as the new arrivals started to spread out. "What happened here?" "Gentlemen." Otto smirked. "May I give you Master Mold, contained within this cube, as well as her primary operative, Trask. Disarmed and ready for interrogation." "You'll never get me to talk." Trask frothed. "Master Mold will return to wipe out THAAAAARGH." Trask jolted as if someone had just run the output of a power station through him, then he slumped, smoke rising from the seams of his armor. "Damn it!" Clark cursed. "That looked like some kind of dead man's switch. We needed him to make sure we stopped the Sentinels for good." "You have Master Mold," Otto pointed out. "Or at least, Master Mold's code. That should supply you with most of the answers you need." "And what shall we do with you?" Zed asked as Magneto landed by his side. Otto grinned. "Well, I do believe that the answer to that is not what you were expecting. For starters, can we have a lift to Washington? Check the description for the links to the author."